Okay, so in this video I'm going to talk to you about the other parts of the .data project that I haven't discussed yet. Again, I have Visual Studio open. Here's our Solution Explorer. And inside of the OpenAir.data project, the first one we'll look at is Pilot List Generator. So let's open this guy up. And what this thing is a function where it returns a list of the pilots by email for the .web project to fill in a drop-down menu with. So you're just handing it a pilot repository, saying get all, and sticking all the emails into a list through this for each loop, and then returning the list so it can be rendered inside of the drop-down. So that's pretty simple. Same thing for route list generator, so drop down to be able to choose from a bunch of different routes that exist inside the database. More or less the same idea, except we're taking advantage of some generics. Selected list item, it's a generics container, but I won't go into too much detail about generics. But the idea stands, where it's just returning a list of the routes to populate a dropdown. The next one we could talk about is security, SHA hash. So you can see why you wouldn't necessarily want to save passwords just as a flat text file in the database. That's a huge security threat. So what we do is whenever somebody signs up, a pilot signs up, and they enter their password, it gets ran through the SHA-256 hashing function. So when it saves to the database, it's been hashed using this secure hashing algorithm. So that adds an extra layer of security for keeping people's information secure. Okay. What do we have next? We haven't, well, in migrations, I talked about it briefly, but this migrations directory is automatically generated whenever you perform your first database migration. And inside of here is where the snapshots of what the database needs to look like is saved. So this is all auto-generated, but the Entity Framework looks at your classes inside the model, and then looks at the constraints set up inside of the context, and then builds the database accordingly. So this is all auto-generated code. The last directory I'll talk about is flight deconfliction. So I mentioned inside of the 2 videos ago, it was the video on the model, there's point and route point. So right now we just implement the 15-minute rule, which is in a single route, no flight can start within 15 minutes of another flight. So here is just the code to implement that. We hand it a flight and then a list of flights. These are the existing flights. And it goes through and checks the flight that's in question against all of the others, and using a little bit of date time built-in functions where you just say subtract and then convert it to minutes, the absolute value of that, so it could be before or after another flight, but the absolute value of that difference needs to be 15 minutes apart. So if it's less than 15, we return false. Otherwise, return true. So that's pretty straightforward. So in reference to the point and route point, here's some functions that we anticipated we'd need, but none of the deconfliction is implemented for this because we don't have, at this time, we don't have the latitude, longitude coordinates for points on a route. But here's some functions that will probably be useful. Distance from points. So you hand it 2 points, it'll tell you the distance in kilometers that those 2 points are from each other. So I couldn't find a built-in library to calculate this. There may be one that exists, so it's something to look into. Also, here's degrees to radians. It's just some helper functions for that function up there. Flight duration in hours. So we have a flight speed and a distance that the flight needs to travel. So this is really simple. You just give it the speed and it'll give you the amount of time that it'll take to travel the distance you defined and the value you passed in. And that, I think, does it for flight deconfliction. Oh, time range I don't think we discussed yet. So time range is very similar to those first two, like route list generator and pilot list generator, but when you're looking at the schedule over in the .web project, if you're running the application, it parses them by day, so you have a schedule for a day. So you can imagine inside of the database we have a whole bunch of flights and they have a whole bunch of different times associated with them. What this does is goes through and filters them for a specific day and then returns them so they can be rendered in the UI to show that those times have been filled. So there's a for each, and we just take this list and append the time of the flight. There's a bunch of different parts for the day, month, year, and it returns all of the available times after it's gone through all these filters. Alright, I think that about does it for the overview of the .data project. I hope that this was helpful, and next I would recommend the videos on how to build a class or an entity inside of the .data project. Also, I would recommend that you watch the Entity Framework videos first before doing that one, but those videos will go through and show you how to add a class, put reference to that class inside of the context so it'll also be reflected in the database, build a repository for it, and then implement a simple test inside of the system test project we have over here. So anyways, thanks for watching.